The planet Seraph Prime was dying. From the tall crystal towers of the capital city, Ambassador Torin watched the sky burn. Enemy ships filled the darkness above like angry red stars. Each flash of light meant another defense station had fallen. Each rumble beneath her feet meant more of her people had died. Torin was a Velari. Her people were tall and thin, with soft blue skin and 4 graceful arms. They had built a beautiful civilization on this peaceful world. They had never known war. They had never needed to fight. For 10,000 years, they had lived in harmony with nature and with each other. Now the Keth had come. The Keth were monsters. They looked like giant insects with hard black shells and sharp claws that could cut through metal. They did not talk. They did not negotiate. They simply consumed. World after world had fallen to their hunger. Now it was the turn of Seraph Prime. Captain Yuna ran into the command center. She was young for a Velari officer, barely 200 years old. Her hands were shaking as she approached Ambassador Torin. "Ambassador, the outer ring has fallen," Yuna said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes showed her fear. "The Keth flagship is charging its main weapon. Our scientists say we have less than 2 days before they can fire it." Torin closed her eyes. When that weapon fired, it would turn her beautiful world into a ball of fire and ash. Billions of her people would die in an instant. "Have any of our allies responded?" Torin asked. Yuna's face told her the answer before she spoke. "The Morani say they cannot help. They fear the Keth will attack them next if they interfere. The Yathi claim their ships are broken and cannot fly." The Torek simply did not answer at all. This was the way of the galaxy. The strong took what they wanted. The weak died. And those in between looked away and hoped they would not be next. "There must be someone," Torin said. "Send the distress signal on all channels. Every frequency. Every language. Beg if you must." Yuna nodded and turned to the communication equipment. Her fingers moved quickly across the glowing panels. The message was simple: "We are dying. Please help us. Anyone. Please." The signal flew out into space at the speed of light. It passed through empty darkness and around distant stars. It reached dozens of civilizations, and one by one, they all said no. Some gave reasons. Some gave excuses. Most said nothing at all. But the signal kept traveling. It reached a small yellow star at the edge of the galaxy. Around that star orbited a small blue planet. The beings who lived there had been rejected from the Galactic Accord 3 times. The galaxy had called them too violent, too unstable, too dangerous. The planet was called Earth, and its people were called humans. Admiral Han Tae-woo was drinking coffee in his office when the message arrived. He was an old man with gray hair and hard eyes. He had fought in 3 wars and lost count of how many battles. His body carried scars that he never talked about. His mind carried memories that he never shared. He read the translation of the alien distress call. Then he read it again. His second-in-command, Commander Park Soo-jin, stood at attention nearby. She was younger than him, but her eyes were just as hard. She had grown up in the orbital stations above Korea, where life was difficult and death was common. "The Velari," she said. Her voice was flat. "They are the ones who called us animals. They said humans should be locked in a cage for the safety of the galaxy." "I remember," Admiral Han said. "They refused our membership application 3 times. They laughed at our diplomats. They said we were not civilized enough to join their precious accord. I remember that too." Commander Park waited. She knew the Admiral well enough to know he was thinking. Admiral Han set down his coffee cup. He stood up and walked to the window. Outside he could see the stars. Somewhere out there, billions of innocent people were about to die. They were not human. They had not been kind to humanity. They had called his people monsters, but they were still people, and they were asking for help. "How many ships in the 3rd Fleet?" he asked. 30 combat-ready vessels, sir. Another 20 in reserve. "And how far is Seraph Prime?" 42 light years. "With our new engines, we could be there in 18 hours. Admiral Han turned around. There was a smile on his face, but it was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a wolf who had just found its prey. "Wake the fleet," he said. "Tell them to prepare for combat operations." Commander Park's expression did not change, but there was something bright in her eyes now. Something dangerous. "Sir, the Council has not approved military action. The politicians will want meetings and discussions and votes." "Then we will leave before they can stop us," Admiral Han said. "The Villari called us dangerous. They called us primitive. They said we were too violent for their peaceful galaxy." He walked toward the door, his boots heavy on the metal floor. "Let us show them what dangerously primitive really means." Within 3 hours, the Third Fleet of the United Earth Space Command was ready to fly. 30 warships hung in the darkness above Earth, their engines glowing blue. Inside each ship, human soldiers and sailors prepared for a battle that would change the history of the galaxy. None of them had ever fought aliens before. None of them knew what waited for them at Seraph Prime, but they were human. They had been fighting since before they could write. War was their oldest companion, and now they were bringing that companion to the stars. The fleet jumped into hyperspace, leaving Earth behind. They were going to save people who hated them. They were going to fight monsters who had conquered 80 worlds. Admiral Han sat in his command chair and smiled. This was going to be interesting. The flagship of the Third Fleet was called the Mugunwa. It was named after a flower that grew on Earth, a flower that could survive almost anything. The ship was built the same way. It was not pretty. It was not elegant. It was a machine designed for one thing only: to destroy anything that threatened humanity. Lieutenant Kim Jin-ho stood at his station on the weapons deck. He was 26 years old, tall and thin, with nervous hands that never stopped moving. He had joined the Space Command because he wanted to see the stars. He had never expected to actually fight among them. Around him, other officers ran final checks on the ship's weapons. The Mugunwa carried enough firepower to burn a small moon. Its main guns could fire projectiles at nearly the speed of light. Its missiles carried warheads that could crack a planet's crust. Every weapon had been built with one simple rule: hit hard, hit fast, and do not stop until the enemy is dead. Jin-ho's hands shook as he worked. In a few hours he would use these weapons against living creatures. He had trained for this moment his entire career. But training was different from reality. First time? A voice asked from behind him. He turned to find Dr. Beek Hannah watching him. She was the ship's chief medical officer, a small woman with kind eyes and steady hands. She looked too gentle to be on a warship, but Jin-ho had heard stories about her. She had saved hundreds of lives during the Mars colony disaster. She had operated on wounded soldiers while bombs fell around her. "Is it that obvious?" Jin-ho asked. "Your hands are shaking," she said. "That is normal. Everyone is scared before their first battle. The ones who say they are not scared are either lying or crazy. Are you scared?" Dr. Beek smiled. It was a sad smile. "I am terrified. I have seen what weapons can do to bodies. I know what I will find in my medical bay after the fighting ends." She paused. "But fear is not a reason to stop. Those aliens out there are dying. Their children are dying. If we can help them, we must help them. That is what it means to be human." Jin-ho nodded slowly. His hands still shook, but something in his chest felt warmer now. In the ship's hangar, Commander Choi Dong-woo addressed his Marines. There were 500 of them, the finest soldiers Earth had ever produced. They wore heavy combat armor that made them look like metal giants. Each one carried weapons that could punch through walls. Dong-woo himself was not a large man, but he moved like a predator. His eyes were always watching, always calculating. He had fought in the Lunar Uprising and the Europa Crisis. He had killed more enemies than he could remember, and he had never lost a soldier under his direct command. "Listen carefully," he said, his voice carrying across the hangar. "The enemy we face is called the Keth. They are big. They are tough. Their shells can stop most standard weapons. But they have never fought humans before." He paused to let that sink in. "The Keth have conquered 80 worlds. Every species they have faced has either surrendered or died. They do not understand resistance. They do not understand what it means to fight until your last breath. Dongwu's smile was cold. We are going to teach them. A young corporal named Yun Nari raised her hand. She was one of the youngest Marines in the battalion, barely 22 years old. But she had graduated at the top of her class in combat training. Her instructors had said she was born for battle. Sir, what do we know about their weak points? She asked. Their joints, Dongwu answered. The places where their shell plates connect. Their eyes. The soft tissue under their mandibles. Hit those spots and they go down just like anything else. He looked around at his soldiers. Remember, they are insects. We are the species that hunted mammoths with pointed sticks. We are the species that climbed to the top of our food chain using only our brains and our stubbornness. They do not know what they are about to face. The Marines cheered. It was a hungry sound, the sound of predators ready to hunt. On the bridge, Admiral Han Tae-woo sat in his command chair and watched the stars blur past. Hyperspace travel always made him feel strange, like he was moving and standing still at the same time. Commander Park Soo-jin approached with a datapad. Sir, we have received word from Earth Command. The Council is very unhappy with our departure. They are calling it an unauthorized military action. And what will they do about it? Admiral Han asked. Nothing, sir. They cannot recall us without admitting that the Third Fleet disobeyed orders. It would be embarrassing. Good, politicians care more about embarrassment than anything else. He took the datapad and looked at the fleet status reports. All 30 ships were performing perfectly. Every crew member was at their station. They were as ready as they would ever be. 18 hours to arrival, Park said. The crew could use some rest. They can rest when the Valari are safe, Han said. Until then, I want everyone sharp. We do not know what we will find when we arrive. In the medical bay, Dr. Beek Hannah prepared her trauma stations. She had seen the intelligence reports on the Keth. Their claws could cut through standard armor like paper. Their acid spit could melt flesh in seconds. The casualties would be horrible, but she was ready. She had enough blood supplies for 2,000 transfusions. She had enough surgical equipment to handle any injury. And she had the best medical team in the fleet. Doctor, one of her nurses said, are we really going to help people who hate us? Beek looked at the young woman. She was barely out of medical school, still idealistic and confused. Yes, Beek said simply. That is what makes us human. We help people not because they deserve it, but because they need it. The Valari were wrong about us. The best way to prove them wrong is to save their lives anyway. The nurse nodded slowly. She did not fully understand, but she would. After today, everyone would understand. The fleet flew on through the darkness between stars. 30 ships full of humans who had been called monsters. 30 ships full of warriors who were about to prove that even monsters could be heroes. The clock counted down. 16 hours to arrival. 15.14. The Keth did not know they were coming. The Valari had given up hope. Both of them were about to learn what humanity was truly capable of. Ambassador Torn had not slept in 3 days. She stood in the command center, watching the Keth fleet move closer and closer to her world. Their ships filled the sky like a swarm of angry insects. There were almost 100 of them now, each one carrying thousands of Keth warriors. The countdown to extinction showed 12 hours. Remaining. Captain Yuna worked at her station, her 4 hands moving across multiple screens at once. She had stopped hoping for rescue. Now she was simply trying to record everything so that someday someone might know how the Valari died. The Keth flagship is almost finished charging its weapon, Yuna reported. Her voice was hollow. Once it fires, our atmosphere will burn away in minutes. Torin nodded. She had accepted her fate. Her only regret was that she could not save her people. Then every alarm in the command center started screaming at once. What is happening? Torin demanded. Yuna's eyes went wide. Her hands froze over her controls. Hyperspace signatures. Multiple contacts emerging at the edge of the system. She paused, checking her readings again and again. Ambassador, there are 30 ships coming out of hyperspace. Their signatures do not match anything in our database. On the main screen, points of light began appearing in the darkness. One by one, ships materialized out of nothing. They were gray and angular, built like weapons with engines attached. They were ugly compared to the elegant curves of Valari design, but there was something terrifying about them too. Something that made Torin's blood run cold. Who are they? She whispered. The answer came a moment later. Broadcast on all frequencies, Admiral Hantewu's face appeared on every screen in the system. He was old, with gray hair and eyes like frozen steel. Behind him, the bridge of his warship hummed with activity. "This is Admiral Hantewu of the United Earth Space Command," he said. His voice was calm, almost bored. "You have attacked a species under our protection. You have 6 minutes to withdraw from this system." He paused. The silence was heavy. "After 6 minutes, we will demonstrate why humanity does not ask permission to survive." The transmission ended. Torin felt her legs go weak. Humans, the Deathworlders. The primitives that the Galactic Accord had rejected for being too violent. They had come, but why? The Valari had treated them terribly. They had called humans animals. They had laughed at their attempts to join civilized society on the Keth flagship. Hive Commander Vrex stared at the screen with all 6 of its eyes. It had conquered 37 worlds. It had never seen ships like these before. "Identify the new arrivals," Vrex commanded. Its tactical officer checked the database. When it found the answer, its mandibles clicked with confusion. "Hive Commander, the ships originate from a planet classified as Class 7, that is impossible," Vrex said. "Class 7 worlds are death worlds. Nothing intelligent can survive on them." "The data is clear, Hive Commander. The species calls itself human. They evolved on a world with extreme temperature changes, dangerous radiation, toxic atmosphere, and countless predatory species." Vrex studied the human ships. They were smaller than Keth vessels. Their weapons seemed primitive. There were only 30 of them against almost 100 Keth warships. "They are bluffing," Vrex decided. "A small fleet cannot threaten the Dominion. Ignore their warning. Continue the attack on the planet." The Keth fleet resumed its approach toward Seraph Prime on the bridge of the Mugunghwa. Commander Park Soo-jin watched the enemy ships with cold eyes. "They are not retreating, Admiral. They are continuing their attack." Admiral Han nodded slowly. He had expected this. The Keth had conquered 80 worlds. They had never faced real resistance. They did not understand what was about to happen to them. "Very well," he said. He pressed a button on his chair. His voice echoed through every ship in the Third Fleet. "All vessels, this is the Admiral. The enemy has refused to withdraw. Weapons free. Show them what humans are made of." The Third Fleet moved forward like a pack of wolves. They did not form defensive lines like other species. They did not wait for the enemy to come to them. They attacked. Lieutenant Kim Jin-ho's hands flew across his weapons console. His fear was still there, but it was buried now under training and adrenaline. He locked onto the nearest Keth cruiser and fired. The main guns of the Mugunghwa roared. Projectiles moving at near light speed crossed the distance in an instant. They punched through the Keth ship's shields like they were made of paper. The enemy vessel exploded in a ball of fire and metal. Jin-ho stared at his screen. He had just killed hundreds of aliens. The weight of it would hit him later. For now, he was already locking onto his next target. Across the battlefield, human ships carved through the Keth fleet. Their weapons were brutal and efficient. Where other species used precise, surgical strikes, humans used overwhelming force. They did not try to disable enemy ships. They tried to destroy them completely. Keth fighters launched to meet the human attack. Thousands of small craft swarmed toward the Third Fleet, expecting to overwhelm them with numbers. Human fighters rose to meet them. The pilots flew with insane aggression, diving straight into the enemy swarm without hesitation. They did not care about their own safety. They only cared about killing as many enemies as possible before they died. One human pilot. A young woman named Liuri destroyed 15 Keth fighters before her ship was finally hit. As her craft spiraled toward destruction, she aimed it at a Keth cruiser and kept firing until the very end. She died smiling. In the command center of Seraph Prime, Ambassador Torin watched the battle unfold with shock. The humans were winning. Not just winning, they were slaughtering the Keth. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were exploding like fireworks. "How is this possible?" she whispered. "They are primitives. They should not have this technology." Captain Yuna shook her head slowly. "Ambassador, I think we were wrong about them. Very, very wrong." The battle continued to rage among the stars. And the Keth, for the first time in their history, began to feel something they had never felt before: fear. The space around Seraph Prime had become a graveyard. Broken Keth ships drifted through the darkness, their hulls torn open and burning. Escape pods tumbled through the void, but no one was coming to rescue them. The humans had not stopped to collect prisoners. They had not paused to accept surrenders. They simply kept killing. On the bridge of the Mugunwa, Admiral Hante Wu watched the battle with quiet satisfaction. 23 Keth ships had been destroyed in the first 10 minutes. His fleet had lost only one destroyer, and even that vessel had taken 3 enemy cruisers with it before dying. "Status report," he ordered. Commander Park Sujin checked her displays. "Enemy fleet is in disarray. Their formation has collapsed. Several ships are attempting to retreat, but our cruisers are cutting off their escape routes. And the flagship? Still operational. It appears to be the command vessel for their entire fleet. If we destroy it, the rest might surrender." Admiral Han nodded. "Focus all firepower on the flagship." "I want that ship dead." The Mugunwa turned toward the massive Keth vessel. It was 5 times the size of any human ship, a mountain of black metal and alien technology. Its weapons were still firing, but its movements had become desperate. Lieutenant Kim Jin-ho locked onto the target. His hands were steady now. The fear had been replaced by something else, something cold and focused. He had discovered something about himself today. He was good at this. He was very good at this. "Firing solution ready," he reported. "Fire," Admiral Han said. The Mugunwa unleashed everything it had. Main guns, missiles, energy weapons. The other human ships joined in, pouring destruction into the Keth flagship from every direction. Inside the flagship, Hive Commander Vrex felt its ship dying around it. Explosions rocked the deck. Crew members burned in their stations. The mighty vessel that had conquered 37 worlds was being torn apart by a species that should not exist. "How?" Vrex screamed at its officers. "How are they doing this?" "They are primitives. They come from a death world." No one had an answer. No one understood. Then the bridge doors exploded inward. Commander Choi Dong-Wu was the first through the breach. He moved like smoke, his rifle already firing. Behind him came his Marines, armored warriors who had trained for years to fight in exactly this situation. Corporal Yunari was right beside her commander. She spotted a Keth warrior raising its weapon and shot it 3 times before it could fire. The alien collapsed, its shell cracked and leaking purple blood. More Keth poured into the bridge to defend their commander. They were huge, terrifying creatures with razor-sharp claws and armored bodies. They should have been unstoppable, but they had never faced humans before. Dong-Wu grabbed a charging Keth by one of its arms and twisted. The alien's limb broke with a sickening crack. As it screamed, he put his rifle against the soft spot under its jaw and pulled the trigger. Nari fought with brutal efficiency. Her training had taught her exactly where the Keth were weak. Every shot found its mark. Every movement was precise and deadly. In less than 2 minutes, every Keth warrior on the bridge was dead or dying. Hive Commander Vrex stood alone among the bodies of its crew. It was the largest Keth Nari had ever seen. Nearly 4 meters tall, with a shell that looked like black iron, but its many eyes showed something that Nari had never expected to see in a conqueror of worlds. Terror. Commander Dong-Wu removed his helmet. He wanted the alien to see his face. He wanted it to see what had destroyed its fleet. "What are you?" Rex whispered. Its translator turned the clicking sounds into understandable words. We are human, Dongwu said. He did not raise his weapon. He did not need to. We come from a world where everything tries to kill us. The air, the water, the plants, the animals. Even the weather wants us dead. We have been fighting to survive since we first opened our eyes. He stepped closer to the towering alien. You have conquered 80 worlds. You thought you were the greatest warriors in the galaxy. But you have never faced a species that evolved as predators. You have never faced a species that refuses to die. Rex looked at the small human standing before it. This creature was tiny, soft, fragile, but it had just destroyed the greatest fleet the Dominion had ever assembled. What happens now? Rex asked. Dongwu smiled. It was not a kind smile. Now you go home. You tell the rest of your Dominion what happened here. You tell them that the Deathworlders are coming. And you tell them that if they ever threaten innocent lives again, we will find them. We will hunt them. And we will end them. The battle was over. 63 Keth ships had been destroyed. The survivors fled into hyperspace, running for their lives from a species they had never known existed. Humanity had lost 4 ships and 217 crew members. Their names would be remembered forever. On the surface of Seraph Prime, the Valari looked up at the sky. The red glow of battle was fading. The enemy ships were gone. In their place hung the gray vessels of the human fleet. Ambassador Torin fell to her knees and wept. They were saved. The monsters had saved them, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. 3 weeks had passed since the Battle of Seraph Prime. The Valari capital was still mostly ruins, but the sounds of rebuilding filled the air. Cranes lifted fallen walls. Machines cleared mountains of broken glass and stone. And everywhere, humans and Valari worked side by side. Ambassador Torin walked through what remained of the Senate Hall. The beautiful crystal dome had collapsed during the bombardment. Now, human engineers were helping to rebuild it. Their rough hands surprisingly gentle with the delicate Valari materials. Admiral Han Tae-woo walked beside her. He looked different out of his uniform. Smaller, somehow. More human. I do not understand, Torin said finally. She had been trying to find the right words for days. We rejected your application to the Accord. 3 times. We called your species dangerous. We said you were too violent for civilized society. You did, Han agreed. Then why did you come? Why did you lose ships and soldiers for people who insulted you? Admiral Han stopped walking. They stood in the center of the ruined hall, surrounded by destruction and hope. Because you asked for help, he said simply. On Earth, that means something. It does not matter if we are enemies. It does not matter if you hate us. When someone calls for help, we answer, that is who we are? Torin's forearms wrapped around herself. It was a Valari gesture of deep emotion. We were wrong about you. So terribly wrong. Yes, Han said. He did not try to soften it. You were, how do we make this right? Admiral Han looked around at the rebuilding efforts. Human medics treated wounded Valari. Human soldiers shared their food with hungry children. Commander Park Soo-jin was teaching a group of young Valari how to use human construction equipment, patient and kind despite the language barrier. You do not need to make anything right, Han said. We did not come here for reward or gratitude. We came because it was the right thing to do. But if you want to repay us, then remember this day. Remember what humans did for you. And the next time someone needs help, do not look away. In the medical center, Dr. Beek Hanna had barely slept since arriving on the planet. There were so many wounded, so many dying, but her team had saved thousands of lives that would have been lost without human medicine. A young Valari girl sat on one of the beds. Her name was Leary, and she was barely the equivalent of a human 7-year-old. She had been pulled from the rubble of her home by a human marine. Her parents had not survived. Corporal Yoon Nari sat beside her, holding her tiny hand. Nari had found the girl during the rescue operations. Something about the child's huge, frightened eyes had broken through all of Nari's soldier training. Are you going to leave? Leary asked. Her voice was small and scared. She had attached herself to Nari like a shadow, following the human soldier everywhere. Eventually, Nari said honestly, we have to go back to Earth, but not yet. Not until your people are safe. Will you come back? Nari looked at the child. She thought about everything she had seen during the battle. The violence, the death, the terrible things that sentient beings could do to each other. Then she thought about why they had come. Why they had fought? Why 217 humans had given their lives for people they had never met. Whenever you need us, Nari said. That is what humans do. In the weeks that followed, the story of Seraph Prime spread across the galaxy. Ships carried the news from system to system, world to world. The Deathworlders from Earth had answered a call that no one else would answer. They had fought with terrifying power and then stayed to rebuild with gentle hands. The Keth Dominion retreated to their home territory and sealed their borders. They had learned a lesson they would never forget. There were some species in the galaxy that should not be challenged. Some species that would not surrender, would not give up, would not stop fighting until their enemies were dust. The Galactic Accord held an emergency meeting. For the first time in their history, every member species agreed on something. Earth's membership application was reopened. This time, there was no debate. Humanity was approved unanimously. Lieutenant Kim Jin-ho stood on the observation deck of the Mugonghwa, looking down at Seraph Prime. The planet was healing. The scars of the Kef attack would take years to fully repair, but the Valari would survive. Because of him. Because of his shipmates. Because of humans, he still remembered the weight of his first kill. He suspected he always would. But he also remembered why they had come here. And that made everything worth it. Dr. Beek Hannah joined him at the window. She looked exhausted but satisfied. How many did we save? Jin-ho asked. Impossible to count, Beek said. Millions, probably. The Keth would have killed everyone on the planet. And how many did we lose? 217. She paused. I knew some of them. Good people. They died so that strangers could live. Was it worth it? Beek looked at him with tired but certain eyes. Ask me again in 100 years. Ask me when Valari children are growing up on a world that still exists. Ask me when the Keth are too afraid to attack anyone ever again. Ask me when the galaxy knows that humanity protects the innocent. She smiled. I think the answer will be yes. Far below, on the surface of Seraph Prime, Ambassador Torn gave a speech to her people. She told them about the humans who had come to save them. She told them about the soldiers who had died. She told them about a species that had been called dangerous and primitive, and how that species had proven to be the most noble the galaxy had ever seen. We were wrong, she said, her voice carrying across the ruined plaza. We were so wrong. But humanity has taught us something important today. They have taught us that true strength is not in conquest. True strength is in protection. True strength is in answering the call when someone needs help. She looked up at the sky where human ships still orbited. We owe them everything, and we will never forget. The galaxy had changed. The old order was dying. A new power had risen, not through conquest, but through compassion. Humanity had arrived, and they were just getting started.